My mother said it in a monotonous voice, her arms folded as if she were reading from a grammar book she'd written especially for me. And the other 20? They're mine alone. Quite simply. The atmosphere in the kitchen was heavy, as if the walls were leaning towards me to hear my answer. I slowly placed my coffee cup down, letting the silence linger a little, so she would think she had won. Then I stood up, took my jacket, and slipped my arm into its sleeve. I said, looking into her eyes, "It's simpler than that. I'm leaving, and you won't see a single penny from me. Pay your own bills." Her face hadn't collapsed. Not yet. Instead, it had hardened, sharp as glass, like the sky freezing before a storm. Behind her, my brother shifted in his seat, avoiding my gaze like a child given a stolen treat. I hadn't packed much, just the bag I'd left by the door weeks ago, just in case. I knew it would come. Outside, the winter chill stung my cheeks. The sound of my shoes on the driveway was the only goodbye I gave them. When I reached my car, I heard my mother's voice again. It was muffled now, her voice having shifted from commanding to panicked. I didn't turn around. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that some people only understand silence when it's paired with absence. What happens when the hands that used to take from you have nothing left to hold on to? I didn't answer her calls that night, nor the ones that followed. The missed calls piled up in my notifications like stones, each one a reminder that her grip had cracked. I drove through 3 towns before the adrenaline wore off. The motel I stayed in smelled like a mixture of bleach and burnt coffee, but it was mine. The key in my hand felt heavier than the key to my old room. The first few days were quiet, too quiet. No footsteps outside my door. No instructions shouted from the kitchen. No reminders that my salary wasn't really mine. But quiet has the power to turn into serenity. And in that serenity, I began to do math. 80% of my income has been disappearing monthly for over a year. Thousands of dollars are being withdrawn without any explanation. All under the guise of family obligations. I had enough savings to live on, but I wanted more than just to survive. I wanted complete independence that people could hear from miles away. I worked overtime. I found a roommate who paid half her salary on time. I opened a separate bank account that my mother couldn't access, an account she wouldn't even know existed. Weeks passed. Then one morning, my phone rang with a message different from the others. The power went out. "Can you send money temporarily?" I stared at it for a long time, remembering every time she told me I owed them, every time my needs were labeled selfish. Instead of responding, I took a screenshot, saved it in a folder I named Receipts, and went back to work. Because I felt this was just the beginning. When the end came, I wanted to document every word, every request. Sometimes the best revenge isn't to cut ties with someone all at once, but to gradually make them feel what life would be like without you. 2 weeks later, the calls turned to voice messages. At first, my mother's voice was sharp, ordering me to stop acting like a child. Then it softened into a plea. In the 4th message, she was crying not because she missed me, but because her water supply had also been cut off. I listened to each message once, memorized it, and never called her back. Every time my phone lit up with her name, it was a gentle reminder that her control over me was finally over. I had built a new routine, work-home peace. No guilt hung in the air. No one held me accountable for what I owed. The money I kept for myself wasn't just numbers in an account. It was proof of my self-reliance. Then my brother called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice was lower than ever. He said, "They're talking about selling the house. It's bad, Diana. She thought you'd get involved. You always have." That last part made me laugh. Not with joy, but with realization. Yes, I'd always been like that. And that's why they thought I always would. I didn't tell him I'd checked the public records, that I knew the mortgage was overdue, that the bank had sent the first notice. Instead, I said, "I'm sorry for what you're going through," and let the silence fall. He was waiting for me to offer something, money, advice, anything. I offered nothing. After we ended the call, I sat there for a long time, the sound of my refrigerator filling the room. I didn't feel satisfied, but something quieter, a sense that they were living for the first time in the reality they had created for themselves. And I knew their situation was only going to get worse. The following message didn't arrive on my phone. It arrived in my mailbox. A plain white envelope. In my mother's handwriting. No return address, but I didn't need one. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "No, dear Diana. No love, Mom. Just, we're going to lose the house. I know you're angry, but this is your family. We need $19,400 to pay off the debt. We'll pay it back to you." I read it twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in the same folder as the screenshots, voice messages, and receipts, everything without exception. They thought the numbers on the paper might sway me, that the weight of their need would eventually force me to return. But the truth is, I had made up my mind months ago about my answer, standing in that kitchen when she appropriated my salary as if it were her rightful due. However, I couldn't ignore the thought that was beginning to take shape in my mind. If the house was going to be sold, someone would buy it. And if that person was me, I would make sure he never saw it again. I didn't rush. I started researching the property foreclosure procedures, auction dates, bidding rules, and every detail that could turn their power grab into a quiet victory. At work, I put in extra hours. Not because I needed the money immediately, but because I liked the idea of paying for the entire move myself, without touching a single penny they had access to. By the end of the week, I had a plan. Not to save them from trouble, but to make sure that the end of this story would be mine. I put the letter back in its envelope, sealed it with tape, and wrote a single word on the front in black pen. Note. Then I put it at the bottom of my desk drawer, where it would stay until the day I needed to remember the exact reason behind what I did later. The auction was scheduled for Wednesday morning. A public auction. No sentimental speeches, just numbers, plates, and signatures. I arrived early, my hair pulled back in a low bun, wearing a simple jacket that made me look like any other quiet bidder. No one even noticed me. When the property listing appeared on the screen, my eyes settled on the address I knew by heart. The house where I spent my income on someone else's comfort. The kitchen where they told me without hesitation that my work, my time, and my money belonged to them. The auction started at a low price. I kept my hand still at first, letting others bid, and watched as the price climbed. When it reached a number that made half the audience hesitate, I raised my board. One bid. The atmosphere in the room shifted. A man standing opposite me made a counterbid. I didn't hesitate. I raised my hand again and again. It became almost a rhythm, his hesitation my confidence, until the auctioneer's voice finally broke the silence. Sold. The papers were in my name before noon. No guarantors, no joint ownership, no legal loopholes that could return them to them. I went out into the sunlight holding the file as if it were my deed of freedom, because it was. That night, I drove past the house, the living room lights on, shadows moving behind the curtains. They didn't realize it yet, but they surely would. And then I wouldn't boast. I wouldn't shout. I would simply tell them the truth, just as they had done to me when they handed me my bags. It happened 3 days later. I was having my coffee at the kitchen table when my phone rang, not with a call, but with a picture from an unknown number. It was a picture of the front door. A bright red sticker on it read, "Change of ownership. Please vacate before the end of the month." Before I could even type a reply, my mother's name lit up my screen. I let the phone ring once, then twice, then I answered. She said, "It's you." There was no question in her voice, only an accusation. I replied calmly, "Yes." Her words echoed in her ears. "You can't do this, Diana. We are your family. We have taken care of you." She almost burst out laughing. I said, "You took it from me. There's a difference." Silence fell. Then the sound of her heavy, ragged breathing could be heard. Finally she asked, "What do you want?" This was the same question I had asked myself in the weeks leading up to it. And the answer was never money. Rather, it was this moment, this turning point, realizing that she no longer had any power over me. I simply said, "I want you out. By the end of the month. After that, the locks will be changed." I heard her suppressing something. Anger or tears, I couldn't tell. She said, "You'll regret this." But I knew the truth. The regret was waking up every day in that house. Hours of work I'd never get back, only to surrender my life to people who saw me as a resource, not a human being. And this was liberation. When I ended the call, I saved the recording in my receipts folder, because I might one day want to remember what freedom sounded like. The last week passed more quickly than I expected. Every time I walked past the house, I saw more boxes piled on the porch, more furniture leaning against the railing. They were packing in complete silence. No shouting, no music, no sign of the family that used to fill every corner. On Thursday evening, I parked my car across the street and watched. My brother carried a lamp I recognized. I'd bought it years ago, back when my salary went straight to their comfort. My sister slammed the trunk shut, refusing to look at me. Then my mother appeared at the door. She didn't get out, but stood there clutching a set of keys, staring at them as if they were the last vestige of her belonging to this place. For a moment, I wondered if she would come closer, if she would try one last time to bargain, or soften her voice, or rewrite the years in a single conversation. But she didn't. She simply turned, disappeared inside, and then returned with another box. By Friday evening, the place was almost empty. I walked through the front gate in the fading light of sunset. The gravel creaked beneath my feet, audible in the stillness. The air smelled different, less crowded, more hopeful. I stood in the hallway, the same spot where she had once told me how much of my life had belonged to them, and reflected on how strange it felt to reclaim a place without raising my voice, without lifting a finger. Tomorrow the locks would be changed. And then this house and everything it represented would be mine alone. The Saturday morning sun shone brightly, cool and clear. The kind of air that awakens every nerve in your body. The locksmith arrived precisely on time, his small car humming softly down the driveway. I stood on the porch as he worked, each click of metal a turning of a page in history. When the last lock was turned, he handed me the keys, soft and cold, and heavier than they should have been. They weren't just metal, they were history. Inside, I felt an emptiness in the house. The sounds were different now, no longer heavy with argument or demands, but light, almost pure. I wandered through each room, gently running my hand along the walls. In the kitchen, I stopped. There she stood, arms folded, dictating precisely how my salary would be divided among everyone except me. Now, there was no one here to claim my work, my time, or my life. I placed a single envelope on the table. Inside was a copy of the title deed, my name written in bold black letters. On the front of the envelope, I wrote one line. The invoices are now yours. No signature, no explanation. I stepped out, closed the door behind me, and left the keys in my palm for another second before slipping them into my pocket. The sun was warm on my face as I walked down the corridor. The same corridor I had once left empty-handed. But this time I wasn't leaving. I was arriving into a life that was now entirely mine. This story reminds us that sometimes the most powerful form of revenge is reclaiming control of our own lives. When others believe your time, money, and energy belong to them, leaving may seem impossible, but it's the first step toward freedom. Diana didn't scream, she didn't beg, and she didn't try to prove herself. Instead, she broke away from this circle, quietly built her independence, and left those who had taken from her to bear the weight of their actions. Buying the house wasn't about ownership. It was about transforming the place they used to control her into a symbol of her independence. It showed that revenge doesn't have to be loud or brutal. It can be quiet, legal, and decisive. In the end, she didn't need their approval or even their understanding. She needed to reclaim her life, and she did. If you've ever been taken advantage of, had your abilities belittled, or been told you owed something to someone who only ever took from you, remember that setting boundaries isn't selfish. Your success doesn't require their permission. And sometimes, the ultimate justice is standing where they once told you didn't belong, and staying there on your own terms.
अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं, ये जो दिन सहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा बेसर्द लगता है। दिल का हर एक कोना अब बहुत ही दूर भरता है। अंधेरी दीवारों में खुद को ढूंढता हूँ मैं, ये जो दिन सुहाने थे उन्हीं को सोचता हूँ मैं। तुम्हारे बिन ये मौसम भी बड़ा सर्द लगता है। दिल का हर एक कोना बहुत ही दर्द भरता है। मेरे साए भी मुझसे अब जुदा होने को कहते हैं। तुझे खोने की राहों में ये आंसू बहने लगते हैं। कहाँ जाऊँ कहाँ ढूंढूं मेरा वो साजो सामा, तो मेरी हर एक तमन्ना तू, मेरी ही रूह का मकां तू। लकीरों में नहीं लिखा जो तुमने ख्वाब देखा था। वफा की इस कहानी में फकत एक गम ही लिखा था। सितारों से भी पूछता है पता तेरा कहाँ होगा, मगर खामोश है दुनिया, कहाँ मेरा जहाँ होगा। बस एक बार मुड़ के देख ले मेरी बेबसी की सूरत, मुझे सफर बस रह गया दर्द का असर, दर्द का